Hey everybody, I'm so excited. It's Colette Baron-Reid and I'm here with Brianna, one of my fantastic team members. And we are going to be talking today, I think you told me, about forgiveness. Is that right?
That is correct.
All right. I have no idea what she's going to ask me, so we're going to have some fun. Yay. Well, fun with forgiveness. That's a
Yes.
fun title, fun with forgiveness. But anyway, let's talk about forgiveness.
Yeah. So in the previous video that you did, you talked about how to forgive others. But I was wondering if today we could talk a little bit about why you should forgive
Ooh,
others.
that's a great topic. Okay, so I'll tell you how I learned about why forgiveness is so important first, because I think it's important. So, a lot of my spiritual path began, I mean, basically my entire spiritual path began over 35 years ago when I first got clean and sober. And that was the first thing that I was taught, was that if I were to continue to hold resentments against people. Now, of course, when I first got in there, I mean, I had a laundry list of people who had done me wrong. And particularly I actually was victimized by people. I've had violence against me when I was young. And, there's a lot of things. I legitimate cause to not want to forgive other people, right? And so I was very confused when they said, you're not going to get well until you can face this. And facing it meant being accountable for my part in it, which wasn't to say that that it was my fault, but it was my part in keeping it going and keeping the story going, that I couldn't get past it. And I realized really early on, if I thought about it energetically, and that's what I want people to know, is like if you cannot forgive somebody, you are energetically connecting yourself to them, basically all the time. They go with you everywhere. So if you could imagine that every one of us is carrying a bag behind us, a big burdensome bag of stories that we have about the people who done us wrong. And so if I thought of it that way, and I was in fact dragging around all of these stories, my ancestral stories, my who did it to me stories, and the boyfriend that dumped me stories, and the guy that screwed around on me stories, all of that stuff. If that was actually preventing my freedom. And when I say my freedom, it's my freedom to make choices that were better for me in my life. My freedom to stay sober, right? Because all those negative stories, that the challenges that kept defining me as a defiant, rebellious person who was constantly talking about how she was victimized, which was so true. That in some way I was responsible for that, and that I had to unplug from that. So it was never about condoning. When I first heard, oh, you would need to forgive others, I'm like, why? Right? Why should I do that? That was a horrible thing, blah, blah, blah. And then I understood it. I was like, oh, okay. So, and I also came to understand that, hurt people hurt other people. Right? It's like that is something to remember, that I had to really look at, and to realize that, okay, by me forgiving that person doesn't mean I'm condoning what happened, or that I would say that, like I was exempt from doing the healing work after the fact. But the truth was that I didn't want to carry the burden, and that I needed to let that go and then do my own work around whatever that was to heal myself. And so the why is to give us a level of independence and freedom from the story that we define ourselves by, that then prevents us from moving forward. Because that was true for me. Now, again, I can only share with you, what I've experienced and what I know. But over the years, when I made a living doing sessions with people, and then doing workshops or whatever, I mean, I think I've been in front of like over 500,000 people, and and then did, I don't know, like 100,000 readings, let's say, over the past 33 years that I did that. There was a level of commonality, universality with these stories and what they did to people, whether the perceived issues were true or not, the burden was the same. So if I could talk about resentment for a second, because that was a big one, because we say that resentment is the number one offender. And so that's kind of like having the story, and then you feed it like a little baby, like, oh, I'm going to give that baby a bottle, the little resentment, I'm going to nurse that resentment, you know what I mean, until it grows up big and strong. And you're actually drinking the poison, hoping somebody else is going to get sick, Only you're the one getting sick, and they don't even care. That's the other thing. Like half the time, the person that you resent doesn't even know you resent them. And you're not doing anything to create healing there. I mean, resentments are all about self-centered fear and self-centeredness, where you are either thinking the person can take something away from you or that they did. And it's all about perception after the fact, right? After the fact, who do you become? Who could you become if you relieved yourself of the burden of the resentment and understood the nature of deep and unconditional love, where you are acknowledging that everybody, first of all, we were all little babies, little kids at one point, right? We were all innocent at one point, and we don't know what possesses somebody else to do things. We don't have that knowledge. But what we can do, like I learned to see God in all things. It doesn't mean I do it right away. I'll be honest. I've nursed a few resentments over the years until I realized, like, oh boy, this is making me feel sick, right? So the why is so that we could all be free.
Yeah. And so I was curious around that, like how do I let go of feelings of hurt and betrayal? So,
how do you?
The why is great, but then how do I actually do it?
So it starts with radical acceptance, right? Like I have to get out of denial. I have to acknowledge I have a resentment. I have to acknowledge that I'm engaging in something that is hurting me. I am not allowing another person to be who they are. I have an expectation or whatever it is. I've made up a story, or I'm continuing to tell a story instead of looking at what could I learn from this, right? So the how is first of all being radically honest, like rigorous honesty. I am doing this right now. I am in it right now, and that means I'm not trusting that there is possible healing if I'm constantly resenting. And I'm not owning the part in me that it's triggering, right? So the how piece is like, can I look at my own shadow? Let's say if you're jealous about somebody, say you're jealous that you're actually thinking that that person can take something away from you. By their success, they've taken away yours. Well, that's not even true. So the how would be, oh, okay, what in me is this affecting? So that's the how. You start doing a personal inventory. And that's what I've always done. Even when I've resisted it, or I'd rather have the resentment because it's scary to look at yourself. That's the other thing, is to be willing, to be willing, to be willing. Sometimes you just got to be willing to be willing to be willing, then to be willing to be willing, then just to be willing to take a look at yourself. Because sometimes the resistance is so strong because you're so scared of what you might find. It's easier to be mad at somebody. Because then you can separate yourself from them too. Like a wall goes up and you feel protected, but you're not.
And gratitude plays a part in that as well, right? Like how can I use gratitude to forgive others?
I think the very first situation that set me completely free, something happened to me during a violent episode, okay? Where I literally left my body and I was able to watch what was going on, etc. And I had this break. Now, it took me many years to realize what a gift that was, because that was the very same psychic place or psychological place that I could go when I did readings for people. So I was able to really get, wow, like there was such a great gift in this horrible situation. And I learned compassion. Like, who does that? Only hurt people, only angry, hurt, messed up people do that to other people, right? So once I got that, I was like, oh, wait a sec. There's a real gift here. I could be more compassionate. As a result of me having been through that, I have more compassion and empathy for other people who have also been through that or been through things like that. And I realized that, oh, I've actually become more intuitive as a result of that awful thing that brought me something as a result of it that then I could use to help other people. So that was something very specific for me. But diving into something that I thought I would never get over was probably the most freeing, liberating thing I've ever done in my life. And then to be able to forgive, truly, and I wrote about this situation in my book, Uncharted. I wrote about meeting one of these people years later. just by chance in a grocery store, and what happened and how free I was. And so going back to the idea about the gratitude piece is that I could feel so grateful for the freedom and liberation and the fact that I became closer to my higher power as a result of it, because I had to trust that nothing was wasted. No experience was ever wasted. And that was also what I was grateful for, that if I could see that way, then everything that I had listed on my big giant laundry list of, this was done to me instead of for me or whatever. I mean, it's hard to see that, but that was really helpful. The other thing is reading books like Viktor Frankl's book, Man in Search of Meaning. And he was the Austrian psychiatrist who actually chose to go with his elderly parents into a concentration camp rather than go to England. So he went and then wrote a book afterwards about how people in situations they had every reason to hate their captors and the way they were treated, etc. And when he talked about when people found compassion and forgiveness in spite of the conditions and the surroundings, and how those people actually made it out the other side, and in a way that was something radical. So I dove into a lot of that kind of material too to help me, because I also realized that you can't have gratitude unless you mean it. Do you know what I mean? Like, geez, thanks for that awful thing that happened isn't going to cut it. It's like, thank you for the freedom that I now have as a result of looking through this through a lens of neutrality and also a lens of self-compassion. Because I think oftentimes self-forgiveness is the hardest thing. Right? I didn't do it right. That was also wrapped up in that one incident for me, is that I blamed myself for taking the ride home and all that stuff, of being in the position that I was in and being drunk and whatever. If I hadn't have done that, that wouldn't have happened to me, blah, blah, blah. So there was the shame. And that's something that's really pervasive right now in our culture, the constant sense of shame, the undercurrent. And I think that's really key to recognize that we're not going to do anything perfect. But as long as we have the good intention followed by good action, because good intentions are useless unless you follow it through. So I think that's really key too, is to give ourselves a bit of a hall pass as we move through our own healing and our growth. And once I realized that I wasn't going to get it all perfect either, that forgiveness was going to come over time. Like, it took me a long time around my mom. Like, family stuff is difficult. But I came out the other side. And I'm even best of friends with a boyfriend of mine who was totally unfaithful, and we're like brother and sister today. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, This is possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is possible with making amends is part of forgiveness.
And so going back to gratitude and the tools around, like that book that you mentioned, the Viktor Frankl book, are affirmations a good way to kind of get into that mind space of using gratitude to forgive?
Yeah, I think so. Affirmations act like mantras, right? So where you have an energy, like that an energy of words, like every word has power. There's a phenomenal book too, by Yvonne Joyce Oswald. It was really, really good. So the idea that every word, and like even the Bible, it says first there was the word, right? So words count. So affirmations are words that have spiritual power. So just like a mantra where you say some word or Sanskrit word or whatever when they teach that, and then your body changes as you say it because you're connecting to some divine concept. So affirmations work like that, where you are firm. I now easily and effortlessly release this anger. But mind you, I'd like to backtrack on that a little bit, because sometimes anger is really important. I don't want to negatively impact really important emotions that we do need, right? We do need all our emotions, but it's when they get the better of us and when we keep nursing it like a resentment that it's troublesome. So an affirmation acts as a way, it's like spiritual healing for yourself. The more you say it, say, I am now willing to forgive this person. I am now willing to send love and kindness to this person that I can't stand. And I got to tell you something. I actually did that for a couple of months. I was having difficulty whatever. And at the end of it, I just felt like, wow, we were all little kids once. We've been hurt. We've come to places where here we are. And could I not see a person just as a human being in their own dignity and their own pain and suffering? And it can really set you free. Affirmations really do work.
And that really brings you back to that compassion piece as well.
Yeah. Compassion is all about the reduction of suffering, right? When we are compassionate, we reduce the suffering of ourselves and others because we are acting in such a way that is kind. Sometimes the kind thing is to detach and stay away. Like, you're not always meant to be engaging. It's like, one of the things about amends making, for example, is like if somebody is experiencing something and projects something onto you, that's not the time where you go to apologize. I'm really sorry, you're projecting on me. That's not what you do, right? But it's like, but when you can really ask yourself, what is my part in this? And can I make amends, or would it's like they say in a thing that I do, except when to do so would injure them or others, right? So you would say to yourself, like, okay, what is the best thing? Like, I'm not going to get on the phone and call the people who did all the things to me in my past and say, hey, I just want you to know I forgive you. Like, I went to the hospital, I did all this thing, I'm sober now, and I just want you to know I forgive you. You don't do that, right? So, but you're more compassionate and you realize, okay, but you protect yourself. That's the other thing. You learn to have greater self-esteem, because being compassionate means you do esteemable acts, right? Like if you want to have self-esteem, you act like you are worthy and you have self-esteem. You want to have good boundaries, you act with healthy boundaries, even if you feel scared, whatever. It's your action. Sometimes you have to act your way into good thinking, into good behavior. It's like, I'm going to act this way. That's what affirmations are. You affirm it before it's real, even, because sometimes you're sitting there going, I don't know if I believe this, but I'm going to do it anyway.
And that kind of ties into journaling as well, right? As a practice for forgiveness, for gratitude, for those types of things as well.
I could not do this without journaling. I couldn't do my gratitude practice, and I could not do a forgiveness inventory. Because listen, everything relates to the self, right? So if I'm in self-centered fear, I will project that the other person is got something, you know what I'm saying? Or I'm going to project my own shadow onto them. So my job is to put it down on paper and to really get a chance to take a look at it and go, is this mine? Oh, maybe it's not mine. But if it is mine, what am I going to do about that? What in me am I disowning, right? So you writing that down is so freeing. I mean, my whole school is based on, like, we journal like that, like for 8 months, like we are doing deep diving into ourselves and into how we engage the outer world. And we become different people at the end of it. And I think that's really key, is to recognize how willing are you? Because forgiveness is work. It's not like, oh, I forgive you. It's okay. It's okay. That's not what it's about. It's not, oh, it's okay. You did something bad to me. No, that's not it. It's not about letting people off the hook. It's about, ooh, what do I need to do? How am I feeling right now? How's that making me feel? And how is that impacting the choices I'm making? So put it on paper. It's when you see it on paper too, it also lessens its impact, because you can have all kinds of giant things in your head that grow, right? You know what I mean? That grow into these big giant monsters when they're actually not. Not really. Yeah. Right? Absolutely. They can be right-sized when you put it on paper. So that's what journaling is for me anyway. Again, like I'm obsessed with journaling. You should see how many journals I have in my house. I collect them. I've kept them all too for years. And I'm always shocked that I saw it a certain way years ago, and I open up a journal and go, this was for me in 1995. Oh my God. Oh, same. Wow. Have I ever changed? Right? It's also good to keep them or burn them after, but I like to see how far I've come.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. And so how does meditation tie into all of this?
So I find for forgiveness, specifically meditation and forgiveness, I mean, I have a beautiful forgiveness meditation that really helps loosen the heart. Because here's the bottom line. If you have no forgiveness, your heart's cut off. There's no love, right? Like, love is what makes the world go around. And trusting a higher power not to say that the higher power is responsible for the conditions of the world. Human beings do a lot of messy things, right? So it's more like if I act as if the God in all life mattered, I think that was the title of a book, I can't remember, but if I act as if that I believe that and I open my heart, how can I not forgive? So I like to meditate on opening my heart and welcoming the person, the institution, whatever it is I'm mad at, or that I need to forgive for myself. And remember, I need to forgive them for me, not for them. It's nothing about them. It's never about the other person, the forgiveness part. It's about setting yourself free and being able to have more self-esteem and self-worth as a result of that. And then you decide whether you want to engage with that person or not. Like in a million years, I never would have thought that somebody could make amends to me, and that me going, yeah, thank you, I hear you, and me too, and here's my part, and then you walk away going, oh, so much more love in the world now because of that. I mean, I think the meditating on the concept of forgiveness and compassion can set a lot of us free.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're in a full moon right now, right? So it's a perfect time.
Perfect time. Yes, perfect time. Full moons are for releasing, and I can always find something to release. Yeah, like I because I do the inventory regularly, I rarely have a lot of people that I have to forgive, or it's more myself. So it's like the perfectionism. What the full moon welcomes us to do is to take a look at what area, and I typically look at it according to the astrology of that moon, right? What is that moon telling me? Like, what's the theme of the moon? So I use the theme of the moon to see, where do I need more compassion, love, and forgiveness, right? And where do I need to let go of any resentments that I have relating these particular subjects, right? So that's what the full moon is for. And it is about taking a little bit of a deeper dive around that subject. And once you can bring it into your consciousness and make the conscious intention and commitment to let that go, again, you feel so much freer. And then that full moon is full, so it illuminates it, right? Then you have an easier time too. I think, I can get so nutty. I'm a Cancer, so I'm ruled by the moon, but oh my goodness, full moons in me, woohoo! I don't have a really hard time discovering what is the problem on the full moon. It's usually pretty glaring. And then I'm like, oh, this is the area I need to clean up. So it's like, I need to take out the trash. Every full moon, I need to take out the trash. What have I accumulated since the last new moon in these 2 weeks? What have I accumulated, if anything? And what could I celebrate? And frankly, that's where gratitude comes in too, is the full moon. Is like, what could I be grateful and celebratory on? And sometimes it is that I could release these things into the world. And I tell you, forgiveness on a full moon, that's so powerful and profound. Because sometimes it'll creep back up on you, and you think you've forgiven, and you're like, oh yeah, they're that. It's really, and I'm like, let's be honest, it's human. Like, especially if somebody else is like, I think it is always about the ego, right? If you feel triggered by somebody, it's never them. It's them pushing your button. And they don't even know it sometimes too. It's like, oh, why is my button pushed? Ooh, maybe I need to release that this full moon. And it's okay if it comes back again. It just means you just haven't finished the work. So I use moon cycles for manifesting as well. Like pretty much everybody does that knows about moon cycles. And when I say the word manifesting, I mean co-creating with a partnership with spirit. Like, you don't do it by yourself. So it's not like your will. It's not like you say, I will have this. No, it's I will contribute my energy, and I'm going to intend this experience, right? And then the form is not up to you. So we put together a PDF, a free PDF for everybody who watches this. And it's, what did we call it? I keep forgetting. It's called A Guide to Manifesting with Moon Cycles. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Yes, I'm obsessed with moon cycles. And it really is about learning how to create with natural cycles and co-create your life with intentions, and discovering your partnership with the universe and how you contribute to the world and contribute less suffering to the world. So that's really cool. So we have the PDF. Is there anything else that's on the PDF that you want to share about? I know we have a meditation, do we?
Yes, there's a link to a meditation, and I think you pretty much covered it, but they can get it by seeing the link in the description below.
Thank you so much, Brianna. That was fun. We get to
Thank you.
skip work together and talk. And love all those guitars behind you. Yay. So everybody, I'm so excited for you to download that PDF and that meditation. And thanks so much, Brianna, for coming on this wonderful conversation. Bye, everybody.
Bye.